Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Season 6 grand premiere of Monday Night Travel. Tonight, we will venture with Rick to the majestic Italian Dolomites and, believe it or not, vacation with him in Venice and the Cinque Terre. I'm Ben Green, your Monday Night Travel moderator and hiking fanatic, ready to hit the trail with all of you. Now, please join me in welcoming our host and travel expert, Rick Steves. Hi, Rick.
Ben, thank you. And yes, a grand premiere. We are kicking off our new season, and I'm just back from a great trip, and it's wonderful to have you all with us. We've been bringing you Monday Night Travel now for something like, 200, 250 Mondays, and it is such a delight to be able to connect. We've got a great crowd right now, and I'm in a great mood. I'm just getting over jet lag. A week ago, I was in Italy, and I went on vacation. It's my fourth trip to Europe this year, and this trip was all about not working, just having a good time, enjoying one of my favorite corners of Europe. I was surrounded by beauty. I was with my wonderful girlfriend. I was enjoying with Shelley the serene city of Venice, the majestic Dolomites, and then, of course, the Italian Riviera. And we capped it off with a visit to Lake Como, north of Milan, and that's called honeymoon country. And it was just a beautiful trip. It was so fun for me to actually have time, not running around and updating my book. You know, I've always got my little black book. I noticed when I was putting the slides together, I still had my black book in my shirt pocket with my pencil right here. I guess I can't get away from that. But I was not filling it up with very much in the way of guidebook information. I was just having all the great experiences that we recommend our travelers have. And I had the luxury of time to do that. And I'm so thankful to be able to have about an hour or so of your time to share with you the highlights of my vacation. It was fun for me. I was able to connect with guides and hoteliers and restaurateurs who I've worked with for 20 or 25 years. And I remember Lorenza, who I've worked with in Milano, she went up to Lake Como to visit us, and she said, "Who are you?" She had never, I've worked with her probably 15 times. She's never seen me just relaxed and enjoying the moment. And this was really all about that. So thank you for joining us again. I've got a nice glass of wine here. I hope you do, or something you enjoy drinking. And your favorite travel partner with you, maybe, and some travel dreams percolating. And I'm about to take you now on a little adventure. Let's see here. And I think I'm gonna share my slides and take you right away. First of all, the summer was a wonderful time. I hosted my niece, Nikki, and she's an artist from New Orleans, and she painted a mural, Vatican Sistine Chapel kind of thing, that now is taking up the ceiling of our main public space at our work. And Nikki spent about a month in town finishing this thing up. And we just had so much fun putting on the final touches that, and then one of the great joys of me as her uncle was just to relax late at night, gazing up at this magic of travel. It really was a wonderful opportunity. And we're just getting that finished up. If you ever come to visit us in Edmonds, you'll want to check that out for sure. And then my daughter brought her family up from LA, and we got to get to know better her newest addition to her family, beautiful little Dashiell. Of course, Dashiell's big brother, Atlas, is getting older and older, and he's going to be quite a traveler, I'll tell you that. Dashiell's following in his foot brother's steps, but he's still learning. He doesn't quite know yet where he's supposed to go for dinner, but we are sure to take good care of little Dashiell. Shelley and I did every chance we had before we headed off on our vacation. We needed to get in shape because we were going to do a serious 1-week hike in the Dolomites. Well, we flew away, and the vacation was the last week in August and the first week in September. Beautiful time to be traveling, I think. And it's really fun for me to go to places I know well with somebody who's really important to me who's never been there, and to enjoy seeing the wonders of these great places through the eyes of a first-time visitor like Shelley. What we did for our vacation was we started in Venice. Flew right to Venice, and then a few days in Venice in the lagoon. And then we got a ride to look at the Veneto, the highlights of the mainland on the inland from Venice area, to see what there was there that I should know about, because one of my themes is to spread out the crowds. And I'm hoping to find some alternatives to Venice in that area. And I'll show you a little bit about that. And then we went up into the mountains, the Alps of Italy, the Dolomites. And we based in Cortina, which is the biggest city there. And we did a 7-day hike in a big circle coming back to Cortina. Where we usually go with our groups and with our guidebooks is Castle Ruth and Ortesi. But I wanted to do the Alta Via #1 hike, so I went to Cortina. After that, we took a 2-hour shuttle bus back down to Venice. And from there, we had to go to Varenna, the Cinque Terre. We went on the train down to Florence and changed trains there, and then connected over to the Cinque Terre and settled in the Cinque Terre. And then we finished off in Varenna on Lake Como before flying home from Milano. Well, Venice is as beautiful as ever, and it was fun for me to check in and be able to just see just how crowded is it, just how expensive is it, just how hot is it, and so on. And it was just, I would say, as beautiful as ever. Of course, they've had a backlash against cruises, so you don't have big cruise ships sailing in front of the Doge's palace. You have, well, what we saw was this amazing old-fashioned sailboat, and that was beautiful. And the cruise ships are now docking north up in Trieste, and they side trip down to Venice. So Venice has worked very hard to moderate the cruise crowds that were trampling the ambience of that city. And I got a chance to, just reacquaint myself with some of my old friends, like the Fort Tetrarchs. I just love the Fort Tetrarchs. Here's 2 of them, made out of porphyry, going all the way back to Roman times. Mysterious statue plugged into the walls of St. Mark's Basilica there. As I said, it was Shelley's first time in Venice, so we got to do all the basic stuff. Stayed in a hotel right in the center. I just love knowing a little bit about what we're seeing. I mean, here's a lane that's wider than the other ones. And if you know how to look at it, you can see that, that, 150 years ago, that was a canal. And they decided to make it pedestrian friendly, so they filled in the canal and they paved it over. You can see the skinny sidewalks and what was the canal, which is the main shopping drag in that part of the town. The day we landed, we just couldn't go inside. It was just so nice to be out and about. Weather was balmy. The orchestras were playing on the main square. I can just spend a lot of time on the Piazza San Marco with the floodlit bell tower and the floodlit Doge's Palace and the magical basilica and these beautiful dueling orchestras at the venerable old cafes. Well, we were strolling around and I saw action at the Doge's Palace. It wasn't on our schedule because we had some other stuff we were going to be doing. And it was like 8 o'clock at night and it was open. And I didn't realize that the Doge's Palace was open on weekends until late in the summer. And we just bought our ticket and went right in. And it was so beautiful to be in the Doge's Palace without the crowds. All over Europe, sites are opening in the evenings to spread out the crowds a little bit. And if you can take advantage of that, you can have some magical moments. But this was a beautiful thing, to be in not only just to be in the Doge's Palace, but to be in the Doge's Palace with no crowds in the cool of the evening. Oh my goodness. The Vaporetto, the city buses, floating buses. They're just like city buses elsewhere, but if you get off between stops, you can drown. And we enjoyed tooling around the city on the buses. Also, I was more tuned into taxis. They're charging a lot for the Vaporettos now, the buses. It's about 10 euros for a ride on the Vaporetto. And if there's 4 of you, for not much more, you can hop in a taxi. It's about 50 euros for a short taxi ride. We took a taxi in from the airport for 100 euros, and it was scenic. That was what I liked about it. You can stand there in the open top and enjoy everything around you. And I became more tuned into taxis, given the fact that the alternative is becoming quite expensive. And if there's 4 of you, it's almost a wash. A good thing about the Vaporetto these days, like the Tube in London, is that you don't need to buy tickets. You can just tap your credit card. And I like the tap your credit card because, believe it or not, they know your best budget option. So if you're just buying one ticket, you'll pay top dollar, 10 euros. But if you've ridden twice already, and let's say a 1 day pass costs 25 euros, well, if you ride a third time, it just costs you 5 euros, and after that, it's free. Because you will never pay more than the 1 day pass. All of a sudden, you've paid enough for a 1 week pass, and you ride the rest of the week for free. This sort of tap in, tap out business is going to be taking Europe by storm. I know it's very popular in London, and now I love it in Venice for my tickets on the Vaporetto. On the Vaporetto, I met two young travelers who were very, very happy. They were in a beautiful mood. And then I realized why. They were using the Rick Steves Audio Europe app. And I've got 65 tours in that thing. They're free. There's 4 or 5 tours in Venice. And one of them is down the Grand Canal, tied in with every one of the docks. And it works beautiful. So I crashed their little party, and I found out how their trip was going, and I found out how much they just really appreciate the Rick Steves Audio Europe app. I got to tell you, that app is a good deal. It's free. The price is right, and it is your easy way to have a guide in your ear and know what you're seeing and know what you're doing. Take full advantage of that app wherever you're traveling in Europe. It works and it's fun. Well, on this trip, I wanted to make sure that Shelley had good guiding. And I made sure we had guides each day. And I had a chance to meet some guides that I had not worked with before that are in my book because some of my colleagues have liked them and put them in the book. And this man's name is Igor. And Igor joined us, and he was wonderful. And we had an offbeat walk with Igor. And I didn't know there's a big banana tree in Venice. That really blew me away, actually. With Igor, I learned all sorts of fun things. Here is how you staple together the marble, the chunks of marble, beautiful marble blocks all around the town. And you'll see these metal kind of rivets. They're like staples and rivets. You have 2 holes in the blocks. You stick that rivet in there, and then you pound either barbell end, and it fills it in, and then it is affixed to that stone, and you're solid. With Igor, we learned some little subtle ways to understand what 600 years ago was sold in a certain building. This would have been a shoe shop. We learned a lot about the Acqua Alta, the high water in Venice. As a matter of fact, we were there as the water was flooding on the main square, and that's not unusual because the sea is rising. And anytime I encounter some consequence of climate change, I just say, drill, baby, drill, because the United States now is in its short-term greed, frankly, the cheerleader of stopping all human combat against climate change. And it's just, let's get the money now, and our children will deal with it later. And in Venice, you're reminded every time the main square floods that climate change is real. The gondolas now have taken the ornaments off of their bow so they can get under the bridges because the water's higher. Why? Drill, baby, drill. You find ground floors are often no longer inhabited, and they have a pump in there to pump out the water. And you find that the bricks are getting soggy, and they've got extra braces to hold them together. Why? Drill, baby, drill. You find in quaint little neighborhoods, people who are stuck in the same little flat have got to raise their floors in order not to get wet when they get out of bed. And you have a step that didn't used to be there, and a door that is shorter than it used to be because the floor needs to be raised so the people can stay dry. Why would that be? Well, without being annoying. Well, let me be annoying. Drill, baby, drill. I spent the next day with Michael, and Michael Broderick is my intellectual guru. He is my sophisticated scholar of Venetian history, and he gave us a 6-hour walk, and it was just riveting. He is so good. and he loves to teach there with Venice as his classroom. And all of these guys obviously are in my guidebooks, and you can book them yourselves. But Michael just really loves to take a small group around, just a family or a couple, and we would go to cafes, and he would explain things. And we did. It was the whole mercantile history of Venice, the sweep of the story of what for 400 years was the most important economic center in Europe. And beautiful little spots. We would stop with Michael, and he'd explain, this is the last remaining workshop for the gondolas. And we'd talk about the gondola culture. We'd notice that on every square there's a cistern, a very old cistern. Well, it's a cistern, but let's learn a little bit more about it. And he would pull out his chart, and he'd explain how not until, 1880 did they have running water. Running water would have made the city vulnerable to attacks. And when Italy was still fragmented until unification in the late 1800s, they didn't want to be vulnerable. So they didn't mind having their own ability to get water through their cisterns. But after Italy was united, they had the technology and the wherewithal to bring it in from the nearby mountains. And now Venice has wonderful drinking water because it comes there from the nearby foothills of the Alps. But here you can see how these cisterns work. The rain water goes through the pavement, and it is filtered through all the sand into the bottom of the well. And then if somebody has a key to the well, and the priest would have the key to the well, you could open that lid, drop your bucket down there and get some water. And you could pour a little bit of water in that dish on the left because that was for the cats. And the cats ate the rats, and that kept the city safer from the plague, and so on. So much history everywhere you look in this city. Along the Grand Canal, you'll just find a long can-can line of big ego palaces by merchants from centuries ago. And most of them are not open to the public. Our guide, Michael, has access to a classic mansion on the Grand Canal. And he took us through there and explained to us how the business worked, where the merchant lived, where he stored his goods, where he did his business and his negotiating. And it was a beautiful opportunity to better understand the mercantile dynamics of that great city. The next day, we did the lagoon. And I don't know if you recognize Igor there, but that's Igor. And he had a boat for us. And he met us at our hotel. And we took off and did the islands in the lagoon. It's a beautiful day out. And Igor reminded us how, Venice was born as kind of a refugee camp. People on the mainland, sick and tired of getting overrun by the barbarians, vacated their communities on the terra firma, moved out into the lagoon, and hoped the barbarians didn't like water. It's a very simplistic explanation of how Venice was born, but I think it's accurate enough. And they encountered a lagoon with marshland like this. They deforested that part of Italy to pound tree trunks into the ground in order to build their community. And instead of farmers, they became great traders, and they established a trading empire that stretched all the way to the eastern Mediterranean. So you can imagine the birth of Venice 1,500 years ago. And to this day, they're still working to dredge those canals. Many of the lagoon waters are shallow enough where you can walk and not get your head wet. But they have to dredge canals out of there so the big boats can get in and out. The first stop you make when you're doing the lagoon tour is Murano. And Murano is where all of the glass blowing factories are. Venetian glass was a big deal. And after they kept having fires on the main city, they made a law that said all the glass blowing furnaces need to be away from the city on the next island, Murano. And to this day, that's where we find the great glass artisans. Really fun to check that out. And if you're going to visit, you get a show. They try to sell you their glass, obviously. And it's kind of fun. Shelley had the opportunity to give it a whirl. Good job, Shelley. Okay. Well, from there we went into the shop and looked at all the chandeliers. And I gotta admit, it's beautiful work. It's beautiful work, but I can't quite imagine a over-the-top Baroque style, fancy chandelier in my world. But they've thought about that and they've made some very exquisite, more modern chandeliers. Look at that thing. And I thought, I've got a room with a beautiful piano and a beautiful view and a not so beautiful piece of lighting above the piano. And I would love to replace that with some version of this. And I just was thinking as I was putting this slideshow together, if you've got some serious shopping you might want to do, be sure you know what you're looking for. Know what the dimensions are. I don't know if you're going to go to Venice and come home with a chandelier. It is an option. But for instance, if you go to Turkey, you're very likely to come home with a carpet like this. I remember buying this carpet not knowing the real dimension, the actual dimension of my hallway. I wanted it to go there, but I was very stressed out. I ended up buying it and hoping it would fit, and it actually fit quite nicely. But do your measurements and make your decisions so that when you go shopping, you know it'll fit in your home when you get home. Next to Murano, we went over to Burano, the island that's famous for the lace making, but we decided the theme was to miss the crowds, and we stopped at an island I had never heard of before, Mazzorbo, Mazzorbo. And there's actually a Vaporetto stop there. And we got off, and we enjoyed a beautiful walk through a park-like island with only 500 people living on it, until we got to a bridge that took us across the way to the famous pastel town of Burano. And Burano was just beautiful, just beautiful. Lots of tourists there, lots of shopping in Burano, but it's a beautiful part. Oh, I just love walking the back streets of Burano. It's just a pastel wonderland. And from there, our boat met us, and we would carry on. Of course, it's pricey to have a private guide who hires a boat so you can get around the lagoon. But anybody can do this exact same thing with a good guidebook and by taking the public bus boat, the Vaporetto. You can do it for peanuts. I was so frustrated. In the last 5 years, I've been to romantic Venice, and I've never sat down and had a nice romantic dinner because I cannot spend an evening enjoying a meal because I got to run around and look at all the restaurants in order to update the listing in this book. And I love doing that, but there's a lot to check in here. And on this trip, of course, I was not looking at restaurants. I was enjoying my favorite restaurants. So in 3 successive nights, I got to enjoy the 3 restaurants that I really wanted to eat in, to get to know the vibe of the place and the waiters and the actual experience. And it really was fun. Tomorrow, you're going to get a follow-up email, and it has all the details, the name of that town I just mentioned, Mazzorbo, or that island, and so on. And my 3 restaurants that I ate in, Algibaggio was the first one, Lina d'Ombra, and Osteria alla Testiere. What I like is finding a place that's a reasonable price, Michelin rated, but not Michelin star. And for the romantic tourist, you want to be on the canal with a nice view. This was, this is just such a beautiful place, Lina d'Ombra. And we had a great dinner here. And what a spot. What a spot. And we had the fruits of the sea, of course. That's the big theme. And just look at this food. Beautifully presented. Very tasty. There's a good looking octopus dish, I'll tell you. Ravioli, pasta. And what does it cost? In Venice, in a touristy, romantic, fancy restaurant. Well, I wanted to show you the bill. I like to look at the bills. I like to know what I'm paying for. I think it's good style for travel. 2 cover charges. So it's €1. Say €1 is $1 each. Our dollar is worth 10% less now than it was 6 months ago. I'll just leave it at that. But this is bad news. And I'll just leave it at that. But this is bad news. Our dollar is going down on the world markets. Okay, but still, think of it as a dollar is a euro, and you're within 10 or 15%. Two cover charges, $12. A bowl of pasta, $30. Ravioli, $30. Fish and another secondi, another main dish, be $40 each. A good bottle of wine for $60. And then a bottle of fizzy water, $6 or $7. Grand total, 200 euros, about $100 each. Includes tax. You don't need to tip. You can tip if you want to, but they don't rely on tips like we do in the United States. It's good style to round it up. But there you see, go to a fancy restaurant, eat a fancy dinner, and it'll cost you about $100. This is my favorite restaurateur in Venice. And Matteo, he runs the Osteria alla Testieri. And what a beautiful place this is. It's been in my book for years. I'm always blitzing in and blitzing out. And now we can stop and enjoy it. We enjoyed that dinner with Roberto. And my son Andy is, I think, 37 years old now. And I remember wandering around Venice with Andy on my shoulders. Andy must have been 3 years old. And Roberto had his son on his shoulders. And we just had a beautiful time enjoying Venice. And for all that time, I've been taking my groups to Roberto's Hotel Guardo. Roberto's retired now, but we just get together. And it's so nice to have time to enjoy the friends I've made over the years in my travels. But when you're traveling, you also have the option to meet new friends. And we were walking home after one of these romantic dinners and just enjoying the ambience of the back streets of Venice all alone on our own, canal. And we came upon a couple enjoying their drink outside of a bar that had already closed. They were just savoring it after they shut the place down. And they were from Kosovo, next to Albania. Fascinating people, wonderfully friendly, lots to talk about. Then we sat down and ended up spending an hour just chatting with them. Beautiful experience. You can have those experiences. They're not in the guidebooks. They're in your ability to connect with the people that you meet. Walking home on one of the other nights, Shelley and I decided to, well, come on, you can't go to Venice with your favorite travel partner without getting a gondola ride. So we went to a place that I've always liked. I just like this one little spot where there's gondoliers hanging out. And you talk to the person and you make a deal. And you spend another $100. And you got 45 minutes floating through this La Serenissima, the most serene city. Late at night, under the bridge's eyes. It's just beautiful. Next morning, we meet Igor again, and we're on our way. We've done Venice, and I was just actually sort of in a jam. I had to get from Venice up to Cortina to meet our friends and start our hike. And I wanted to spend that day getting to know the Veneto, the mainland area, inland from Venice. I know Igor does a lot of minibus tours of the mainland. So I said, Igor, I'm going to spend a day with you. Show me your best look at the mainland's attractions from Venice and drop me in Cortina, which is 2 hours northwest of Venice. And because I needed to kind of basically make it a twofer. Sightsee all day and end up in Cortina because the next morning we'd be hiking. So Igor and his wife met us at Piazza Roma, where you go to meet any car when you're in Venice. And we headed out. And, the mainland from Venice is famous for the architecture of Palladio. He was from the city of Vicenza. And if you look on the back of your nickel, you'll see the Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's place, inspired by Palladio, Palladian architecture. And there's plenty of opportunities to enjoy Palladian architecture in its birthplace. Igor and his wife actually live in Treviso. We went to Treviso and Treviso, and they showed us that town, and it's nice, but to be honest, I wouldn't spend time going there. And then they took us to another town called Bassano del Grappa, and it was also nice, but it just didn't float my Venetian boat, if you know what I mean. One thing cool about Bassano is a bitchin' rhino. Look at that thing. and we enjoyed a beautiful taglieri. Good word to know when you are in Italy is a charcuterie board, and that would be taglieri. Taglieri, Tagliere. And it's a great value. Beautiful rustic cheese and meat and beautiful bread and olives and a bottle of wine. You got yourself a memorable, filling meal that won't break the bank. So, moving in from Venice, you see down in the bottom, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but Venice and the lagoon. And from here, we got the foothills of the Alps. And I said Treviso is nice and Bassano del Grappa is nice, but I'm comparing it to Padova. And Padova is much nicer. And Padova is just half an hour from Venice. So I'm still committed to Padova. I still love Verona, the hometown of Romeo and Juliet and wonderful Roman ruins. And I'm not that big a fan of Vicenza unless you're into architecture, but Padova is just amazing. And then after doing some sightseeing around here with Igor, we went into the mountains and we got to Cortina. Cortina is the main mountain resort, the ski resort of the Dolomites. And this is part of a mountain range that arcs all across Europe and it plunges into the Mediterranean at Marseille on the French Riviera. The Alps. In Italy, the Alps are called the Dolomites. This is the view from our hotel, our first hotel in the Dolomites, Cortina. And if it looks like it's in a shambles and everything's disheveled and getting fixed up in a hurry, that's because they're hosting the Olympics in February of 2026. The Winter Olympics will be in Cortina, and they're not ready. And they're not going to be ready. All the events are ready, but the infrastructure, the roads and the hotels and everything, they're scrambling. But I scouted Cortina way back when I first wrote my Italy book, and it didn't make the cut. I far prefer Castle Ruth and Bolzano as home bases for exploring the Dolomites, and Ortesi also. This is our hotel for the first night, and this is our hotel for the last night. And from there, we just did this wonderful circular hike. We met our friends, Bob and Ginny, and we had a big extra bag that had all of our hiking gear in it, including our poles. I love hiking with good hiking poles. I'm sort of sentimental about my poles. Bob and Ginny rented poles and it worked just fine in Cortina, but Shelley and I wanted to bring our own poles. So we had to check our bag. It's unusual that I check a bag, but because we were checking our bags because of our hiking poles, I got to bring my Swiss Army knife. I love it's so sentimental. I used to always travel with my Swiss Army knife. I found it, I put it in that bag, and I took my Swiss Army knife to Europe. Here's to Swiss Army knives. Well, we were on a hike. It was a tour. We paid for a tour by a company called Max Adventures. And Max is great. I've been on 2 of their hikes, multi-day trips that come with hotels, some dinners, and a Sherpa service that takes your bags from one hotel to the next, and an app that lays out your hike and makes all the plans for you. But there's a lot of tour companies that do this in the same way as Max. So just shop around. But Max has never steered me wrong. And these are our 4 bags. Look like siblings here. And Bob and Ginny and Shelley and Rick. And we'd kiss our bags goodbye in the morning, and we'd hike all day, and we'd come into our next hotel, and our bags would be in our room waiting for us. So this is a kind of tour. It's not very expensive. It cost $2,000 for 7 days. And that was the comfort version of the Alta Via 1 hike. We wanted, we're old and soft and need our comforts, and didn't want to, sleep in a big dormitory and wait in line for our showers. Actually, part of me wanted to do it, but part of me didn't. So we decided to go with the comfort version of the tour, which came with comfortable hotels and this Sherpa service. And then every day you'd have a plan. Sometimes you'd hike right out the door of your hotel and right into the door of the next hotel. Other times you would take a lift or a bus from your hotel. On this particular day, we took the public bus, and it goes to the trailhead, and from there you would embark on your hike. And I gotta admit, I've got a whole stack of maps here because I love to collect these maps from the trip. And every day, I mean, here we stayed in San Vigilio, there'd be, a tourist map that would give you the whole, all the maps all the hikes you'd do from there. Well, fine and dandy, but I had a real tough time getting comfortable with all the maps overall. But we had this app that came with our tour that made sure we knew exactly where we were going and what we were getting into. And I got to say, it worked really well. So we headed up, and basically each day we would gain 2,000 or 3,000 feet in altitude. So you'd start at 4,000 or 5,000 feet, and you'd finish at 7,000 or 8,000. No, you would peak at 7,000 or 8,000 feet, usually on a ridge. That's where you'd probably have your lunch, and then you'd hike into the next valley where you'd find your hotel, or a bus that would take you to a hotel when you got down to the road. Look at this beautiful scenery. I mean, the Dolomites, just non-stop jaw-dropping beauty. And this is the Alta Via 1. That's the venerable, most exciting, serious hike in the Dolomites. And there's enough little mountain huts and so on to make sure you've got water and meals along the way if you like. We didn't buy any meals from the lodges. We always took lunch with us, but it was always nice to get a drink at these places. As a matter of fact, a lot of times we would eat lunch there, but we would buy a drink and they would welcome us to use the table. As you hike, you look for this sign, and you see that on rocks everywhere, and you know you're on Alta Via 1. But you had your app, and the app, this is not the frame, but when you had the map up, the GPS map, you would see exactly where you are. And I mean, if there was a little tiny deviation in the trail and you're 10 yards off on the wrong trail, you got it right there. So as long as you're following your app, you know where you are compared to where you're supposed to be. And it's just really important that you've got your battery. So we had a brick that was an extra battery that really was a godsend for us. And this was another dimension of the app that we had with the tour. And it showed us the altitude climb over the course of the day. I called this the torture meter. And you can see where you start, like this would be about 1,500 meters or 5,000 feet. And then you could see you'd go to a peak and down into lose some altitude, and you'd peak way up here. And that would be at 2,200 meters, which would be about 7,000 feet or something like that. And then if your knees are bad, you got some serious descent here, and you go all the way back down to about 3,000 feet. But you could just at a glance go, okay, we're going to climb a lot, and then we're going to go down a lot. And you'd see where you were because of your app. Beautiful hotels. It was ski country, so we're in ski country in the summer, and the other part of their industry would be entertaining the hikers. But because we're on a comfort tour, we're staying in towns where there's nice restaurants and nice hotels. The gear was so important. I got to Cortina, and it occurred to me I just didn't have a good enough raincoat. The weather forecast was miserable. So I sprung for a very nice waterproof coat. And I'm so glad I did, and it's a nice souvenir. I had my beloved poles, I had my wonderful Osprey day bag, and I had my Merrill boots. I love these boots. I bought them in Chamonix, as a matter of fact, when we were filming the Tour de Mont Blanc. And these are just great shoes. Everything I wear underneath is wool. Wool socks, wool underwool, wool shirts, wool hat, wool, wool, wool. Know how to use your gear. For instance, day bags have ways to carry your collapsed poles, and half the tourists out there don't even realize that. I'm sure, I'm not a gear wonk when it comes to hiking, but I just love having good gear and being up in the mountains and doing well. Also, you got to stretch. You got to get in exercise, or you're going to be endangered. And, I really, my guru in hiking is Cassandra Overby, who's been on Monday Night Travel a number of times, and I'm a big fan of her guidebooks about long distance hiking in Europe. She taught me an exercise that I love because I've got 70-year-old ankles and feet, and I don't want to do a stupid thing and twist my ankle or something like that. So I exercise, and it's helpful for me because I also do the ABCs, so I can remember the ABCs. Let me just show you what I will do in my hotel room to make sure that I'm taking good care of my ankles. Buongiorno. I'm Rick Steves. There's some beautiful mountains out there, and we've got to do our stretching. And to make sure that my ankles and feet are in good shape, I like to do the alphabet. It's really important. Check this out. A, B, C, D, E, F, and I do this F, J, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Oh man, so many little things can go wrong if you're not in decent shape. Stretch, that's the cool, most important thing. Stretch and be ready for your hike. You'll be glad you did. Happy travels. Let's do the alphabet again. Okay, enough of that. But you do, I mean, stretching is critical. I'll just tell you. When you stretch, you feel good after a day of hiking. At our one of our dinners at the hotel, I gave Bob my favorite underwear. Marywool, wool underwear, and he loved them. Wool shirts, wool socks, wool underwear. Just do it. Out there, the trails are so well kept. I just love hiking in the Alps, whether it's France or Italy or Germany. And I just kept thinking, we're cutting but we can't afford it in our country, to maintain our parks and even hardly keep them open. But in Europe, they take very good care of their parks. And we got to talk to these guys whose mission is to go out there and make sure the trails are, nice and tidy. Beautiful views, daunting climbs. Look at that. Oh, baby. And it's broken ankle alley there, so you got to watch your steps. I would never, ever do this hike without hiking poles. I don't care who you are. You should have hiking poles when you do these. We had some very bad weather, mostly good weather, but we had a few days that was bad, and we had the right gear. So it was kind of fun to be hiking in the rain, to believe it or not. Dramatic views. Cows were checking us out. And as I mentioned, if you buy a drink, you can usually use Mountain Hut's tables for your picnic. And we did that, and then the rain came. But a picnic sure tastes good on top of the mountain, I'll tell you that. Much fancier picnics than I would do, thanks to Jenny. Bless her heart. Muddy boots, muddy pants. I call this little strip of trail Poncho Via. Lots of people in ponchos. Look at that trail. Look at that beauty. It just feels good. This was the most daunting stretch of trail of any place, going up to a place called Refugio Lagazuoi. And it was famous because of its World War I outposts. This was actually on the front, World War I, 100 years ago, 110 years ago. And you can go in there and actually see what it was like in these little tiny, lookouts. And you can do the lookout thing today. The Dolomites of Italy. This is Marmolada. It's the tallest mountain in the Dolomites. Marmolada, 11,000 feet tall. Here is another one of those torture meters. And you can see from this that all day long, we're going to be gaining altitude. And that's what this hike was. We got up to the very top of that, and then we took the gondola down. But all day long, we were going until we reached 2,800 meters. It's about 8,000 feet up. Gondola down, and then off to our next town, Allegri. Al Alleghe. Alleghe was the town. I had the hardest time remembering these towns, but I didn't have a hard time ordering wine. Boy, I'll tell you, good Italian food is really good after 8 hours of walking. And this restaurant had a Coravan menu. A Coravan is this gadget you see on here that lets you get wine out of a bottle without corking it. It sticks a needle through the cork and then replaces what you took out with some kind of a gas so that the wine thinks it's not been exposed to any oxygen and it still tastes fresh. That's what you have to do with a real expensive wine so that you don't have to throw away old wine if you don't sell the whole bottle by the glass. So they can sell fine wine by the glass with a Coravan. One part of the comfort tour was that we would spend on a couple of occasions 2 nights in a row in the same spot, giving us a chance to laze around or take an easy hike or take another hard hike. And we enjoyed those days, and we would take the gondola up and we would enjoy a less demanding hike on the couple of days that we had 2 nights in a row in the same spot. Here, clearly, you're looking at a ski resort in the summer with a big reservoir because you got to have a big reservoir because you got to make snow. That thing is a snow shower maker or whatever. And everywhere you look, when you see a ski resort, you see plumbing for making snow. But beautiful lodges, you can imagine skiing into that. And we can just imagine and savoring the moment there, taking a little break midway through our hike. Layering, 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 layering. You've heard about that. Each day we'd go through all the different layers. 4 different layers. The next day we headed off, and we were not on an off day. It was another demanding hike. There we see the mark. It's trail number 1, Alta Via 1. Typical views along the trail. Oh, it was so beautiful. It was just beautiful. And all 4 of us made it just great. I was really thankful, and we had a wonderful trip. There's Marmolada in the back, highest mountain in the area. And then hiking down for on this last day, we came upon all of these sheep. It looks sort of like a sheepy dream. I guess you could count sheep. And then we had been hiking for 7 hours, and then there was a long, long switchback service road, and it was raining, and we thought this is going to take us forever, and we were exhausted, and Bob's knees were bad. He didn't want to go down that whole way, so we begged a good Samaritan with an empty pickup to take us down, and we barreled into the back of his truck, and that was our comfort tour, the climax of our comfort tour of the Dolomites. There's our beautiful Good Samaritan. And our hotels were waiting for us at that next stop. Man, oh man, that was a good trip. Saying goodbye to Bob and Jenny, we got ourselves a train ticket. Obviously, you buy them online. And if you have trouble with that, I find people at the hotel desks know the ins and outs of it. I saved a lot of money by going to the hotel desk and letting the guy know which company to buy from online. And you can see we went from Venice up to Cortina and then back to Venice, cut the train to Florence and over to the Cinque Terre, Vernazza. Yeah. I think we'll take a little break here because I know that we've been doing a lot of traveling and I want to do the Cinque Terre. But Ben, I bet we have some questions from our travelers.
We do indeed, Rick. We have so many people adding questions to the Q&A. We even have John and Sam, whom you met in Venice, tuning in as well.
Is that right? Hey, that's great. All right. Hey, John and Sam.
We'll start with Venice, Rick, since we largely covered that first. Colleen would like to know if you have a favorite area of Venice to sleep.
You know, I do not try to sleep away from the tourist in Venice. I was just thinking about that. I like to sleep right downtown. The whole place, when the tourists are gone, the whole place is just mystically beautiful. And I like to sleep in a classic old building. It can be a humble hotel, but I like it to have a once upon a time for it to have been a great building. And I love the architecture of the places I stay in. And I like to be, within a 5 or 10 minute walk of St. Mark's. So We slept in two different hotels on this trip, and both of them were in the old center. And one of them was a little farther away, but I got good at using the Vaporetto. And that once you've maxed out on your costs, you're not paying $10 every time you get onto that boat. You've topped out at the cost of a day pass, so you can just ride the boats for essentially for free. So yeah, I stay right in the old center. A lot of people are trying to save money by staying on the mainland at Mestra. You can do that, but yuck. I'd rather pay extra and picnic for dinner and stay in the heart of Venice.
For the tap and pay with the credit card, do you have any concerns about that, Rick? Do you keep your credit card in your money belt and then take it out when you need to tap?
Oh, I have you can have your credit card on your phone, and then you can use your phone to tap it also, which means you're pulling out your phone, and that's dangerous. You just got to be careful, but I'm not that paranoid. And I've tested it in Venice and I've tested it in London, and it bills you properly, and locals love it, tourists love it. The only downside is you're exposed by showing your credit card. But if I think if you're on the ball, that's not a risky thing to do.
And RFID is not a common occurrence, would you say, Rick?
RFID, what is that?
That's the scanning of the credit card. So you sometimes see people concerned about that. It's really just pickpockets that are the main
It's
issue.
pick. I mean, I've never even heard that, whatever
No.
you just mentioned, and I'm over there all the time with my credit card. There's weird things that happen, but they just become folkloric. The real risk is pickpocketing. That's, I'm sure, the lion's share of the risk. And when there's a crowd, well, I'm going to show you that in the Cinque Terre where we're going next. But when there's a crowd, you gotta be on the ball.
Joel is curious about tipping. For that 200 euro meal, Rick, how did you tip? Did you
I
just
would
round
tip.
up?
I would tip 10 euros.
Mhm.
Yeah, Europeans, well, Italians will walk out of there without tipping anything. As an American, they're putting up with the tourist and everything. I would tip 10, between 5 and 10%.
Rick, did you come home with a chandelier?
No, I've never been serious about doing that, but now I'm actually thinking it would be a good excuse to go back to Venice. I fell in love with that. I can't believe it, but we live in Dale Chihuly country here, and I don't have any glass. I'd love to do that.
I would like to see how they ship that home.
Yeah. Well, those chandeliers. I've seen how they ship them, and they come apart, and it's just in a styrofoam thing, and you could drive a truck over it. I think it'd be okay.
Ah, impressive. Okay, switching to the Dolomites now. Did you need any cash while you were there hiking?
No, I use the credit card. I like cash, but I'm getting pretty comfortable with the fact that many countries are pretty much going cash free. Sometimes I just have cash because I like the tangibility of it. But you never need it. You've always got a way to pay by credit card, and it's just getting tap, tap, tap.
Did you need cellular service for that app, Rick, for
No,
hiking?
the good thing about that app is it works on however GPS mapping works without being online. So we never had trouble knowing where we were on the map or reading what we had of the map. It was wonderful.
How did you combine for packing the hiking gear and clothes with your regular clothes for Venice and the Cinque Terre? Was this a challenge? Did
It
you?
was it was kind of a challenge. It's funny you ask, and I should know better, but it was a challenge. And we have this bag that we sell called the Don't Tell Rick bag, this one. And it's just a very cheap bag, and I take it along because if I'm going to leave home light and fly home with stuff, I'll put it in there and I'll check that one onto the airplane. We call it the Don't Tell Rick bag because Rick doesn't like you to get distracted with too much shopping. But I had my own Don't Tell Rick bag and I didn't tell Rick. But in there we put all of our hiking gear in nylon duffels and our heavy shoes and our poles. And we just zipped that up. And that was a drag to be carrying that. But it really was a nice thing to take it away from everything we had in the hotel in Venice. And the one thing is Normally, I travel around with just one of our little Chivita bags, which has no structure, no support. It just hangs on your back, and that's all I need when I'm in a city with a book and a sweater. But on this trip, we needed the scientifically designed Osprey bag, and that's a little awkward. So I've got my big bag, the carry on the airplane size bag, and then my Osprey day bag, which has a frame in itself and waist belts and Cuban hitch and all that. And that was just a little more clumsy than a normal bag. But I still brought my Civita day bag to run around in the Cinque Terre and in Venice because I didn't want to run around with my hiking bag.
You love that Chivito day bag, Rick. That's a classic for you.
It really is. It's kind of sentimental.
For laundry, was it just in the sink or did you have someone do it professionally?
I gotta say, with wool, you don't need to wash it that much, So I'd wear the same socks. I won't tell you how many days I wore them in a row, and I certainly won't tell you how many days I wore my underwear in a row, underpants in a row. But with wool, you can get away with it, in the t-shirt. But I would wash in the sink, and then on a 3-week trip, I think I did one good solid professional wash. I had the hotel in the Cinque Terre wash all my clothes.
You mentioned 4 layers. Can
Hmm.
you describe a little bit more about those layers that
Yeah,
you
a wool
recommend?
t-shirt, and then the shirt I'm wearing right here, this shirt, which is a REI shirt. It's a great shirt with sun protection, and then a wool overshirt and a down vest and the rain jacket. So that was even five, I guess. One, two, three, four, five. Yeah. So you got all of that, and you need it because you're working up a sweat and you don't need a lot of warmth. You're stopping for lunch, or it gets cold and blustery, or the sun comes out, and you're peeling it off and putting it on. But the main thing is you want to have it in those increments so that you can moderate it correctly.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You want to be prepared.
It was great. And the down vest is just a beautiful thing. I even needed the little wool hat, in the middle in summertime in Italy, but a couple of times it was cold enough to need that.
I'll just ask one more question, Rick, from Amy. In reflecting on this trip, would you make any changes, or if you could do it again, would you do anything differently?
I'll tell you, to be honest, I wanted to go on the Alta Via trail, and I don't regret that. But I also think it would be arguably a better trip to hike out of Ortesi or hike out of Castle Ruth and do the Seceda hike and the Alpi di Susi hikes there. But they don't give you the gravitas of having done the Alta Via one. So, um, and I think we compromised quite a bit by not sleeping in mountain lodges, by having to sleep in fancy hotels. So we had to get back down to towns, little towns, and that kept us off of a lot of parts of the trail. So I don't think I would have wanted to do the hardcore one. So I needed the comfort one. But if I was able to do the hard one without the comfort, that would have been a much better hike. And if I was to do it again, I would cobble together my own hikes out of Ortesi and out of Castle Ruth. And it's the same thing that Shelley and I did 3 years ago and 4 years ago. We did the Tour de Mont Blanc, which was great, hiking all around Mont Blanc in a week. And then we sort of did our own tour from Gimmelwald and Kleine Scheidegg and Schinnigaplat and Interlaken and Grindelwald, all in that area. And I knew which hikes I would always wanted to do, and we just put them together, and we had better hikes. So there's lots of ways to do it. Okay, shall we carry on with more slides now?
Yep. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you for all those questions. And now we will go to a whole different world, the Cinque Terre. And of course, here we have the five lands nestled in all of those beautiful, beautiful vine-covered and terraced hills. Shelley and I were still hiking. We just had to put on the sun hat, and there's my wool t-shirt. And we wanted to hike, so we hiked a lot in the Cinque Terre. Ah, so beautiful. I just love it. And I noticed a huge improvement just in the development, the infrastructure, the affluence of the Cinque Terre. this visit. Beautiful fruit bars and cocktail bars in the middle of nowhere as you're hiking like this. Beautifully kept up trails like this that wasn't that way before. And part of that is because you have to pay now to hike. You have to buy the national park pass. But here we are coming into Varenna. So sunscreen, very important. Lots of crowds, but when you're hiking, you don't have those crowds. If you look at this, this is what we bought when we arrived, and it is a 3-day pass for the Cinque Terre National Park, and it is a €10 supplement to walk the Via dell'Amore with a timed entry, 10 o'clock on Thursday or whatever. So you have to get that. You get it online. Your hotel can help you figure out that. And then your way to hop from town to town is with the trains. Now, I'm giddy about this schedule because here you've got 3 trains or 4 trains an hour, and they're punctual, and it works, and it's all free with your National Park Pass. It's really cool if you take full advantage of the trains. Here's what you have to pay a supplement for. This is €10 extra. This is the famous Via dell'Amore, the walkway of love. And included in that is, it says it's a guided tour. And most people just don't read the fine print and they pay their €10 and they go through. But we asked the lady at the gate if the tour was for real, and she said sure. And she went with us and she walked with us for a couple hundred meters and gave us some beautiful information about the Via dell'Amore, which was exactly the same that's already in the Rick Steves guidebook. I wanted to do some of the special experiences while I was on the Cinque Terre with Shelley. And all right, I was working kind of because I needed to check the things that are recommended in our guidebook. I wanted to do them personally. And this woman is the sommelier of the region's winemakers. She is really very respected. Her name's Yvonne, and her little wine tasting place is at the top of Manarola. And by the way, I'm going to give you the information, the connect information with all these people in the email you get tomorrow. But we just had a beautiful chance to appreciate how good the Cinque Terre wine is getting. I remember when it wasn't good. It was just table wine. It was $2 a bottle, and count up the empty bottles and pay and get out of here. But now this wine is much finer, a little more expensive, but really worth drinking. That evening, we stayed at Villa Steno and Pasquale, Hotel Pasquale in Monterosso. And this is my good buddy, Matteo. He's my bodyguard whenever I'm researching in the Cinque Terre. And that's a long story. But if you write a guidebook to the Cinque Terre, you need a bodyguard. And Matteo's wonderful wife, Carla. And they do a pesto making experience. And as there are many similar opportunities, but we made our pesto and we made our pasta, and then we ate it all. And it was really fun, and it tasted good, and we learned a lot. It was inspiring, and anybody can do one of these tasting experiences. Hiking on the trails, going to all the towns. It's a little bittersweet for me because I've been doing this long enough where some of the people I've known for 20 years are retiring and they're no longer there. But a lot of the people are still doing it. And this is the best hotel in Cornelia, and it is run by a guy named Alberto. The gelateria is called Alberto's Gelateria. And I dropped in and, hey, there's Alberto. And he had his, faded photograph of me and him when we were younger, but not as good looking. And his gelato was as tasty as ever. Here he is with a prickly pear called a fico di India in Italian, fico di India. Cactus flower or cactus fruit flavored gelato. This was the view from our hotel with the train zipping by in Monterosso al Mare. And this is where our group stayed. In fact, one of our groups was there while I was visiting. I love to run into our groups as I travel. This was Stephanie Bergman's group, and man, oh man, their faces, their smiles just said it all. They were enjoying their Best of Italy tour. There was just a commotion of our tour groups coming and going. I think I met 3 different groups while I was there. And it was kind of nice, to be honest, when all the groups were gone and it was quiet. And Shelley and I could just sit there and have another cup of coffee and eat Marco's breakfast pie or breakfast cake. Every day he had a different cake. And we would just watch the people heading to and from the train station and the beach filling up. And we hopped on Stefano's boat. This is sort of a little a cottage industry of taking tourists out on boat rides and swimming off of the boat. And then you got, if the weather's not too choppy, you got shuttle boats that go from town to town to town. And this is where it gets really crowded. And the Cinque Terre can be a mess with crowds. I'll just tell you that. This is one of the small towns, and all these people are waiting for the shuttle bus down to the train station. And the bus just took off, and none of them got on the bus. So they have to wait another 20 minutes to get on the bus. So if you're not going to be walking, and if you're going on a crowded day in the summer, you're going to have that kind of crowd situation. I loved my experience with Luca in Vernazza, and we went on a trainino. And tourists cannot go on traininos normally, but as a journalist, Luca was able to take me on it. But so I hesitate to even show this because I don't like to do things that regular tourists can't do. But this was just too much fun, so I got to share it. Here we go. We're on the trainino, the train designed for the grapes. And I'm a human being on the grape train.
Hey, I'm Rick Steves, and I'm sitting on a trainino. That's a monorail train line that the guys who work the vines and make the wine and harvest the grapes use. And we're above my favorite town on the Italian Riviera. This is Vernazza, one of 5 towns. And the town is perfectly preserved. And it's one of those reasons I just keep coming back to the Italian Riviera. I've seen a lot of the Mediterranean coast, and there's nothing as beautiful as the Italian Riviera, the Cinque Terre. Oh, baby. I love traveling, and I love traveling to the places where you really get a sense of the rich heritage and the locals that keep that heritage alive. And you got your 0-kilometer delight. The grapes are here, the vintners are there, and the tourists, they flock in and enjoy them with their dinner. Happy travels from Vernazza on the Cinque Terre in Italy.
Wow, that was really cool, gotta say. Remember, there's a lot of experiences, and we've got this little book here, Italy's Cinque Terre. And if you do your homework, you can find yourself some great experiences. Luca took us on this, you can see Vernazza in the background there, and this is the trainino. And they're all over the place in the Cinque Terre, and it's a godsend for people who work those steep fields in the heat of the summer. When Shelley and I got on, I've been on them before, but Shelley was quite struck by how steep it was. Unforgettable, indimenticabile, yeah, baby. So we survived it, and then Luca took us on a tour to appreciate the historic terraces. These terraces are centuries old, and it's quite a challenge to keep it all intact with the weather that comes with climate change. The flash flood destroyed this town here, Vernazza, 10 years ago, and knocks down a lot of the old terraces, but they build them up again. And this is Luca's little spot here, and with his tour groups, he hikes people up there. But a moment after we got there, he put up his shade. He had his white wine with a solar panel cooler. And a moment after we got there, we had it all set up and had a wonderful wine tasting. Yeah. It was so beautiful. Something about it. To be sampling the wine with a next generation vintner who really is mission driven to keep that environment healthy, with some beautiful focaccia and the fruit of the vine. It was beautiful, a beautiful experience. And again, you're going to get an email tomorrow with the details if you need to connect with any of these people. I just love the Cinque Terre. And this is my favorite restaurant in Vernazza, Belforte. Andrea, who hustles and makes sure everybody's having a good time. And we enjoyed a beautiful meal. So good. I'm such a I'm so fortunate. I'm just so thankful for so many things. And I get to go to these places. But I'm not alone. Look at this. This is La Spezia. No, is it La Spezia? Yeah, I think it's La Spezia. Packed out. And this can be horrific. It can be absolutely horrific. And you gotta understand that if you're there in the peak time, you're gonna have peak crowds. As I said, I'm working to spread people out, and I went to Levanto, the town next to the Cinque Terre, and this is a very practical town to make for your overnight stay if you have a tough time finding a room in the Cinque Terre. And I booked an e-bike ride with a guy named Matteo, and we had a great time with Matteo. And e-bikes are just a lot of fun, I gotta say. So we went to several towns along the coast that were not the Cinque Terre. There's cars here. And this one is called Bonasola. Bonasola. It's the next town over from Levanto. And it's got a beautiful beach. And it's just not as magic as the Cinque Terre because it's got cars, but it's not bad. And it's a great example of taking a train line that's been abandoned and turning it into something great for people. The train used to connect the towns together along the coast. It no longer does. And today people walk and people bike and people e-bike through the tunnels, the old train tunnels. And that was pretty exciting, I got to say. E-bikes are just a hoot if you haven't been on one yet. And then we went up to Lake Como. I didn't really have time to extend our trip this long, but the mayor of the little town of Varenna wanted to celebrate me for 30 years of bringing tourists to his little town. And they declared that I would be Varenna's ambassador to the world. So I came up there with Shelley, and they just took real good care of us for a day and had a great time. I've always looked at the gates that guarded these villas, and we had our own just magical villa. The man from Milano who owns it came up and made sure we're all situated okay. And this is Varenna. It's the freshwater Vernazza. That's basically what it is. It's a beautiful spot. And Nadia was our guide. And here you can see Lake Como. It looks like a person striding out. And we're right in what's called mid-lake. And she made sure we had a beautiful tour of the town. I love to get a local tour. And then we went out and did a boat tour along the lake that charmed George Clooney enough where he actually bought a villa there. And it was kind of a publicity stunt for the town. So they had the photographer there taking my picture, and the newspaper reporter and all that. It was just a lot of fun. Beautiful people, hard-working tourism, and they appreciate the tourism. Going into the tourist information office, and the staff there is wearing their Rick Steves ambassador sweatshirts. Collector's items, I'm sure. Both of them have their Rick Steves sweatshirts on as they're helping me with my map so I know what to do. The wonderful mayor, we had such a wonderful evening there in a lovely restaurant on the waterfront. And then I got all of the fancy treatment with the police chief and the mayor and the director of tourism, and my proclamation of Ricardo Esteves, the ambassador to the world for Varenna, 1981 to 2025. Everybody was gathered there. It was cute. By the way, if you want to know more about all these sort of experiences, I love to share them, and I do it on Facebook. And I do it on Facebook, and if you miss it, you miss it. But every day or so, I make a post on Facebook. It's simply Rick Steves on Facebook. And I'll be sharing more about this event, which really was fun, in the coming days on Facebook. So check that out if you want more information. But, this is the best-selling travel guidebook in the United States to any place other than Disney World, the Rick Steves Italy book. And a few years ago, Little Varenna was actually on the cover. Not Rome, not Florence, not Venice, but Varenna. And they wanted to make sure I knew that they appreciated that. So there's our tour. Flew into Venice, did the Veneto, went up into the Dolomites for 6 and 7 days to hike, and then 2 hours back to Venice, catch the train for 2 hours to Florence, the train for 2 hours over to Varenna to the Cinque Terre, and then they sent a car to get me, and it took 3.5 hours to drive up to Varenna. And then from there, I like Varenna from a practical point of view because you're just an hour and a half from the big airport in Milan, where you got flights back to the United States. Just a quick review. In Venice, we went to Mazzorbo. That was the island with no tourist on it. And then my 3 favorite restaurants, if you want to have a romantic splurge. We visited a couple of towns on the mainland. But again, I'm still a fan of Padova, which we did not go to. The Dolomite hike was called Alta Via #1. And you got the details there. Well, there's the main places we stopped is along the hike. The Cinque Terre, remember Levanto and Livorno, 2 totally different cities, trains going in different directions. And if you're not on the ball, you might hop on a train going to Livorno thinking you're going to Levanto. Anybody can make that mistake. I did. Bonasola is the town past Levanto, where we went to on the e-bike, and this is the e-bike company. And here we've got the names and URLs of the places that we experienced. And again, you will get that tomorrow or the next day when you get your email as a thank you for joining us on Monday Night Travel. And Ben, that's what I did on my 2025 vacation.
It was captivating, Rick, especially the Trinino.
The Trinino. Well, you think it was captivating. Talk to Shelley.
I will. I want to hear her perspective as well and see how it matches up.
We're still together. It's okay.
But is it possible for someone like myself, Rick, to hitch a ride on a Trinino, or should I
No,
stick to the hiking?
they really don't. It's dangerous. They can't make it a public thing. So as I try to do, I'm very careful in my guidebooks just to talk about things that are accessible to everybody. You don't need to be a VIP to do anything you encounter in our guidebooks. But 3 or 4 times I've had the occasion where I've had the opportunity to ride a Trinino, and it's so fun. It almost makes me want to be a vintner in the Cinque Terre.
I was just at Lake Geneva, and they have them as well, as you know, Rick, and they look like a lot of fun. Well,
Yeah, yeah, it'd be a fun thing to do for tourists, but I think they know better. There would be people that were just a little bit ditzy, and they'd be injured.
for questions, I'll include a few more from hiking before we switch over to the Cinque Terre,
Sure.
Rick.
Very good.
Marcia is curious about bathrooms on the hiking trails, and feel free to be vague with us, Rick, if you
I'm going to be vivid. We laugh about people looking for bathrooms on the Cinque Terre, on the long trails, because we get in the middle of nowhere and we meet some sweet lady, and she says, "Do you know where there's a toilet?" They're all around. Just find yourself a tree or a rock, baby. Bring toilet paper from home. That's just the way it is in the mountains. But people get up there and they wonder where's the toilet. If you really need your comforts that way, every time you go to a hut, they've got a nice toilet, and you'll encounter those, but they're not there when you need them. That's a reminder, though. When you're traveling, you don't go to the bathroom when you have to. You go to the bathroom when you can.
Excellent point. And I probably should have asked this next question first, but I'm gonna go with it here. How about water on the trails? Did you need to pack your own water, or could you find some that you could filter?
You pack it, you could filter, you could find some and filter, but I didn't want to mess with that. I've got a wonderful metal water bottle that's a REI type water bottle. I was so ticked off about spending $40 for a water bottle, but it's my favorite thing. It's cool, it's fresh and tasty, the water. It's just, I love it. It's my water bottle. It's metal. And I can hike an entire day if I have to with that one water bottle, but I wouldn't recommend it. You fill it up when you can, but you got to be mindful of where are the next water stops.
And what was that app, Rick, that you've been discussing? Can you share it one more time?
The app is what you get when you take that tour.
Okay.
So when you take any of these kind of tours, You get an app and it tells you every day's hike. You got the map and you see yourself along the map all day long. It's got information about safety. It's got information about where you'll find food. It's got information about altitude gain. Um, it's got feedback from other people who've done the hike in the last month. It's pretty cool what they're doing. When I take a tour from another company, I'm always thinking, what should we know for our tour company? Every tour company has different needs and different clientele, but I love to learn from other companies of what they've innovated.
Switching to the Cinque Terre, Rick, Bob would like to know when is it too late or too early to go to the Cinque Terre, and is there a sweet spot?
Well, it shuts down in the winter. I've been in there in the winter, and the restaurants are not open. There's shops are closed. Most of the hotels are don't want to see you. So I wouldn't go. You can go in the dead of winter, but I don't think the charm really suffers. But there's a long shoulder season, so you can start in March and go till November, I think. They would tell you you can go all year long, but I think in the dead of winter, it doesn't. Why are you here? So I found, actually, Shelley and I have done our long hikes. We've done three in the last 4 years. We've spent 2 weeks, end of August, beginning of September. Works great in this part of Europe. Every day it's in the 70s, and if the weather's bad, it blows through.
We've had a few questions about Airbnbs, Rick. Do you recommend people avoid them?
No, Airbnbs are a reality. I would just remind you, a town like Varenna, Airbnbs are the scourge of that town because landlords just want to make money. Landlords are not going to subsidize culture. They're not going to subsidize the community. They're not going to subsidize local senior citizens. It's just get out of here. I can make more money renting to tourists. That's the landlord. But the reality is towns lose their character if nobody lives in the center anymore, because then there's no more grocery store. There's just another wine tasting shop. And I was just in Varenna, and this young, hardworking entrepreneur had his new fancy wine tasting place. And I said, "What was here before? You're new here, aren't you?" And yeah, he said, "It used to be a grocery store." That's exactly the consequence of Airbnb. And you meet people who all their life, this has been their street. This has been their community. They know the lady that lives up there. They get their shoes fixed over here. That's where their dentist was. And now there's no lady up there anymore. There's no cobbler. There's no dentist. It's all touristy stuff. So Airbnb robs a neighborhood from the people whose families have been there for generations, and it sells it to the highest bidder. And the highest bidder is you and me, the tourist. So put that in your pipe and smoke it before you stay in an Airbnb. Having said that, Airbnb is kind of a nice option in Paris, but you're not helping with the character of that neighborhood. My favorite taxi driver in Amalfi Coast, Raphael. I've worked with him for 20 years. He's probably the most dear soul. He's in the running for the dearest person I know in Europe. And his family's traumatized right now because they never bought a house. They've always rented a place for their family. And now rent has doubled because of Airbnb. And he has to move 10 miles further away from town and sleep in a ugly, modern concrete strip because the tourists have outbid him for his more charming piece of real estate. So that's kind of the reality of Airbnb. That's the ethical thing about Airbnb. In the countryside, Airbnb doesn't have that consequence. We were filming in Iceland, and we could not get any hotels. There's way too many tourists than there are hotels. But there's Airbnbs everywhere. And in the middle of nowhere, somebody turned their barn into a sixplex for tourists, and they call it Airbnb. Sign me up, You've displaced a cow, but you haven't displaced a family. So in the countryside, Airbnb has less of a consequence on the neighborhood.
And as a guidebook researcher, Rick, we list such wonderful hotels in our books. They're places for connection and information, and you don't get that with an Airbnb.
Ben, that's such an important point. Thank you very much. I like to stay in hotels because it has sort of a elegant connection with the culture, and you're part of the scene, and you're contributing to the scene rather than dislocating somebody. And Airbnb used to be cheaper, but now it's about the same as a hotel. So, there are cases when you need an Airbnb, but I don't blame communities for getting up in arms and demanding that their government stops this Airbnb business because it is ruining the soul of the town. It's changing the entire economic makeup of that community.
Thank you for that, Rick. Final question. We've noticed that you've become interested in hiking these past few years. How did that interest get sparked for you? And will you continue it next year with another hiking trip?
I feel so good, Ben, when I'm hiking. With the poles, you get a workout on your upper body as well as your lower body. For me, I'm at an age where I just want to keep pushing it and stay in shape. And this is a good excuse to be in shape before the experience. So you're thinking, I gotta get out there and take some hikes beforehand. And I'm so busy, I can kind of bully that aside. But it's a good part of my life right now. It's a great way for me to go to Europe and not have to research because there's nothing along the trail that I can research. It's beautiful me time. It's beautiful us time when you travel with your travel partner. And there's a lot of beautiful long distance hikes in Europe that are venerable hikes, and they're a beautiful slice of the culture. Cassandra's got this book that talks about them all over Europe. And what I'm wondering about is next, do I want to do more of the mountains, or do I want to do a coastal hike or something that's more hilly? And I like the miserable, brutal 3,000 foot climb every day, altitude gain. On the other hand, it might be nice to go along the coastline. But the fact is, we have plenty of options. So I think I'm going to keep doing it. I feel so good after having done it, and it's a way I can relax. Hey, I want to thank everybody for joining us. I really had so much fun, and for me, it's a real delight to be able to share that. And I want to remind you, we've got great Monday night travel episodes coming up. I'm so thankful for our crew at Monday Night Travel. We've got Emily, we've got Lisa, we've got Gabe. Thanks, Gabe, in the trenches tonight, and Ben for emceeing. I do want to remind you, coming up, we've got shows in this order. Next week, Switzerland, then Liverpool, then Norway, then Hungary, and then Portugal. Hey, with that, I want to thank you. Wish you happy travels, and we'll see you soon. Ciao.